All right, Julian, thank you. Well, the polls close in less than 4 hours, and we will find out tonight who will be facing Tony Evers in November. That and the U.S. Senate race, where incumbent Senator Ron Johnson will almost certainly face Mandela Barnes.
To help get a perspective on what's at stake, we've invited two familiar analysts back to the studios. It's been a while, 4 or 5 years, I think. Matt Rothschild, the executive director of the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign. He's the former editor and publisher of the Progressive magazine.
Good to see you, Matt.
Brandon Scholz, the president and CEO of Wisconsin Grocers Association, former Wisconsin Republican strategist.
Good to see you guys in person.
Hey. I know. It's been quite a while.
It's nice to be back.
So, Matt, let's start with you. Let's talk about the U.S. Senate race. It took a strange turn about 2 weeks ago, and all the candidates seemed to get out of the way of Mandela Barnes.
Yeah, I think that's one reason we may see lower turnout in Democratic areas, because the biggest race isn't really there anymore because Mandela Barnes, basically won it already. And I don't like seeing candidates drop out, really. I didn't like to see it last time in the Democratic primary for president. But this time I think it was a little different. Tom Nelson ran out of money. Alex Lasry didn't run out of money. No. And Sarah Godlewski didn't run out of money either, but Sarah Godlewski and Lasry had a choice to make because they were dropping behind in the polls. And I'm sure that their campaign folks told them, look, the only way you can close the gap here is to go negative on Mandela Barnes. And that would have caused a lot of trouble with the Democratic base. And if they want to have a future in the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, I think they said, I got to take a walk here.
But how does it affect enthusiasm among Democrats now that it's a foregone conclusion?
Well, the enthusiasm for the primary was way down once all those candidates dropped out. But there'll be a lot of enthusiasm in November, I promise you that.
So how do you think he'll fare against Ron Johnson in the November?
The danger with what was parlayed in the Democrat primary, the rest of them dropping out and giving it to Mandela Barnes, makes it easy for today. But it doesn't test Mandela with some of the messages that they could have gone after. So if Alex Lasry wanted to go a little bit negative, wanted to attack him on some of the issues that Mandela's been on, and if Mandela Barnes was successful, he would have been tested going into the general election. Without having any of that happen in the primary, he now comes into the general election against Ron Johnson, and it's all going to fly heavy. That is going to be a heavily contested, heavily messaged race. There's going to be plenty of attacks on both sides. And for Mandela Barnes, he's not really been tested on where he is on all of the issues that they pegged him. So the Republicans will just wait for the primaries over. Democrats are all set to attack Ron Johnson. They got plenty of messaging there. But now Mandela Barnes is out there alone, not tested, and he's going into the fight of his life.
Yeah, but I'm sure his staff is testing him every day on the stuff that's about to come.
But it's not enough. It's not hand-to-hand combat like we know in how the general election's going to be.
Let's turn to the governor's race on the Republican side. It's pretty neck and neck.
Totally. It's been a topsy-turvy, up and down. The pace with Tim Michels getting up in the polls. Rebecca Kleefisch goes negative and is successful at it and makes the race even. Michels counters with an attack. She comes back with an attack. Yesterday's polls show her up a point or two. All within the margin there. So people say, well, what's going to happen? I'm like, if you got a coin, toss it, because I think it's going to be that close. And we're going to look around the state and maybe in Waukesha and that area for sure in southeastern Wisconsin to see how they perform. That's the key place to see how people are doing.
Matt, 3 months ago, Tim Michels wasn't even a candidate. Now he's neck and neck with Rebecca Kleefisch. He's running as a political outsider. And of course, he has the endorsement of Donald Trump. So what does he have to do tonight?
Well, I think the Donald Trump endorsement is the big question. And the question it raises for me is, does Donald Trump own the Republican Party of Wisconsin, or are there enough Republican voters in Wisconsin that have a mind of their own? And my sense of it is that this may be a bad night for Trump, both in the governor's race and, Robin Vos is going to keep his seat as Speaker. And the idea that Donald Trump could come in and endorse Vos's opponent, Steen, and make Steen win. I mean, if Steen wins, that's going to be the shocker of the night. So I think when all is said and done, it's not going to be a great night for Trump. And I don't know between Michels and Kleefisch, but if I had to bet, I think Kleefisch may win narrowly.
How about the Fox Valley, Brent?
Great point, because if you go from the Fox Valley to Green Bay, that is kind of untested waters, because the candidates have been working it hard, and certainly they've been running a ton of ads. Both campaigns, Tim Michels, Rebecca Kleefisch, all up and down the valley with media and around the state. But that's kind of, you're not certain where it's going to go. We know what happens in Waukesha. We know what happens around the state, because Trump's endorsement for Michels will be strong if you get north and west and into that 3rd district primary. But the valley's been kind of quiet. There's legislative races. I don't know how that one's going to turn out. That's a coin toss as well. as Matt said, this race is so close that there's really nothing that could push it one way or another in big chunks. Maybe a Trump endorsement here will help Michaels up north, but if he doesn't do well in the wild counties in southeastern Wisconsin and Clayfish performs just as she would be expected to be, she'll have enough votes to counter this heavier vote in the upper part of the state. So it's just kind of, it's a Wild West primary for Republicans.
And Matt, when you look ahead to November and the general election, which candidate do you think would have a tougher time with Governor Evers?
Well, Evers is ahead of both of them at the moment in the latest polls I saw. I think Rebecca Clayfish actually is a more difficult opponent for him. I think she appeals more to suburban women, and I think, you know, Evers has proven himself. He can beat a guy who comes on real strong. He did that with Walker. I think he could do that with Michaels too.
What do you think, Brandon?
We're going to see more money spent in this state. Both state party chairs estimated $700 million on the two top of the ticket races. Not anything below that, just those two. And it's not going to stop at 700. If they can get to $1 billion in this state, I'm not going to be surprised. That's an obscene amount of money. Even I think that.
Yeah, you're stealing my lines here.
But it's going to happen because both sides are guilty. This is no longer Republicans have both sides are going to play money. That could determine how this is going to play in November. Who's got the stronger message and who's able to deliver. It's going to go into infrastructure because Republicans aren't going to vote for Tony Evers or Mandela Barnes, and Democrats are going to vote for Ron Johnson and, you know, Tony Evers. It's going to be who turns out that extra vote right down to Election Day, and that's where we're going to be.
And the nation's watching.
Oh, every minute.
What is it, 90 days?
90 days. We'll see you back here then.
Looking forward to it.
So good to see you guys.
Yeah,
See you soon.
Yeah.
Go and vote. Very important.